Hello and welcome to The Corner. My guest today is an entrepreneur, a really good race car driver, in addition to being a really good race car driver instructor, which is not easy to do, and really one of the nicest people that I know. But I'm going to let him tell you about the events that he's done, the people that he's worked with. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff McKague on The Corner. So again, thank you so much for coming. As I said, you've come a long way, not only metaphorically, but physically.
That's right.
So, Coburg, right?
Coburg.
Coburg.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's not that far away, is it?
Some people say it's another province.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But now, originally you were born in St. Catharines?
That's right.
Okay, cool. So, right in St. Catharines?
Yeah. I was born there and lived in St. Catharines. My parents were in the same house for 47 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty much unheard of these days. But I was there for 18 or so, and then I left for school and never went back.
Cool. Now, whereabouts did you go to school?
A couple of different places. The first school I went to and dropped out was Niagara College, and I lived at home during that, and then I went to Seneca College in Toronto.
Okay.
So from Toronto, I jumped into what ended up being somewhat of a career.
Okay. So, is it the same career now, or a different career? Okay. So,
Yeah.
automotive in
Yes.
some way, shape, or form. So, I'm always intrigued at what sparks someone's sort of interest, especially in cars. Was it genetics? Like, was your dad really into cars, or was it just something that?
Totally different from my family. My father, my mother, nobody in my family was into cars. The closest thing that was car related was my great uncle, whom
Your great uncle?
Yeah, and I didn't know him all that well,
Right.
but he was a pretty big name in the what at that time was called Formula One boat racing, hydrofoil boat racing.
In Canada?
Yeah. His name was Art Asbury. He's deceased at least probably 10 years, probably maybe a bit more. And he held the water speed record in the boat called Miss Super Test. I forget the number. It was like 183, 185 miles an hour.
On water.
And he held it for about 25 years. So I can't remember the date that he actually achieved that, but that was one of his big things, and he was influential in making or helping make the parachute for those drivers, because they were in open cockpits. I sat in his boat, one of his boats, Miss Quebec I think it was, and it was a wooden boat, beautiful, but the seat was about this big, and there was nothing holding them in. So if the boat got airborne, they wanted to get away from the boat, so they would pull their chute, and the chute would pop and pull them away from the boat, so the boat could roll in the water and break up into pieces.
Holy cow.
So anyway, those are a couple of things. That's the closest that automotive or at least racing, which is part of what I do,
Holy gee.
has really gotten my start
Right.
in it. Where I actually got the interest in, and it should be clear, I'm not a car fanatic.
Okay.
I like cars. I like cars mostly for what they offer as as an automobile. I like the technology of them, and I enjoy the cars and the looks of them, and of course they provide me a living, so that part I like as well. But the bigger part is driving them. I like driving cars, and so I'm not the as some people would say, "Oh, you're a car guy. You must know all the numbers." No, I couldn't care less. I'll learn them for when I need to know them, but I appreciate the car for what it is. But beyond that, I wasn't really a car guy either. And it was the only things I can put my finger on are my dad and I used to, when we went up north to see my grandmother, we would stop at a go-kart track and we would go go-karting. I was little. I remember there was a two-seater.
How old were you in karts?
Oh, and when I say karts, this is just recreational.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Like
But
literally stop on the side of the road. Dad and I would go and I remember them having two-seaters, like a little seat up front so you could put the kid with you and drive around the track. 5 maybe? I don't know.
Wow.
I really don't. It could have been even younger than that. But when I was steering the cart, as I recall, and my dad would have worked the pedals. And then as I got older, we would stop and I would run my own go-kart. And that was fun. I then worked on a fruit farm, when I was 14 and 15. And don't know why, but I quickly became a supervisor at that age, believe it or not.
15?
Yeah. And I didn't realize the amount of power that I had. That's another story. But I had a Pinto, a Ford Pinto flatback. And flatback means that they've cut off everything from the dashboard back.
So you put fruit on it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you actually sat on this basically 4x8 sheets of plywood.
So it's just a chassis?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'd bomb around the orchard with it. And when it was morning and it was damp, there was a little sliding going on, and I had fun. I only hit one tree, and the only damage of that was somebody had their thermos, and it was a glass inside of a steel.
Right.
I broke it. That was the only damage. The Pinto lasted. The tree was okay. It was all good. But so I found a lot of fun in that, and then when I got my license to drive on the street, I was 16. I went in on my birthday and I wrote the test so that I could drive. A month later, I took the test and I got my license.
So there's an aptitude, to say the least.
Well, I guess. I mean, I like I said, I've done a little bit of driving before that, right. And on simulators, of course, too. Right. No, they weren't simulators at that time.
Well, that was a couch with a steering wheel.
Yeah, pretending, eyes closed, pretending. It was a plate, actually. So I guess somehow I picked up, and I really started to enjoy that, the driving. And once I got my driver's license, I typically my parents weren't wealthy by any means, but there were 2 cars in the family, so if I wanted a car, I had a car most of the time, and I had great fun driving that. Things that I probably shouldn't have done on some gravel roads with twisty curves. Right. And I imagined myself a rally driver. And
did you really?
I did, yeah. I thought rally was the ultimate. Like you don't know what's over the next curve. The car in front of you has changed the road. There was so much change in it that I thought they were the ultimate drivers. I still think that.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I didn't have that opportunity, but I at that point, while still in high school, people would ask me, "What do you want to do?" And I want to be a race driver.
So you knew then?
I don't know that I knew, right. And I didn't end up being a race driver. But I pursued it.
That's entirely true. You pursued, yeah.
I definitely pursued it, being naive as to how to become a race driver at that point, I thought, well, I just got to be good, and all else will fall into place. But that's not the case. It wasn't then, and it isn't. Certainly isn't now. But it led me down a path, and that path.
So the next step was actual. Going to get some instruction or some training?
I did. I went to, at the time, it was the Spinard David Racing School. I did a one-day school. And I forget how I got that. I remember how I got my 3-day school. But the 1-day school, whether I paid for it or I used money that I had earned, or
From
whether,
the
yeah, maybe, or it was a gift. I know I did a 1-day, and then I went back, and it would have been my second year of college.
Wow.
That I went back. I saved money up. My parents at that point, they were investing in my schooling.
Right.
And
were they aware of your desire to?
They were.
Yeah.
I skipped a step.
That's
Because
okay.
I quit high school
Okay.
because I was so frustrated with everybody telling me that I couldn't be a race driver.
That's good motivation.
So I quit high school and I went to, at that time, my girlfriend's father's house, and he was smart enough. He was a bit of a, I don't want to use the term cowboy. He was wild, kind of a wild child kind of guy.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a very good way to describe it. Unconventional. But he was smart enough to encourage me to go back to school as being the best. And it took a week or so. I actually lived with him for a week.
So this was just a little respite then?
It was,
school. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah. And he had a horse farm, and I actually worked for him during that week. And I think he gave me all the jobs that I wouldn't want to do, and I did them. I was fine with it, but he convinced me eventually that it just made more sense to go back to school and work it as a backup.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of money in racing. He was right. I then went back to school and went to college. Quit the one college, went to another college. And in that, while I went to the second year of that college, it was Labor Day weekend, I remember. I went early to school. I had saved money up, and I had paid for this 3-day course on my own.
3 days.
My parents didn't know about it, but it was money that I had saved up that I was going to use to basically feed myself over the next few months while I was at school. So did the course, and following the course, I ate peanut butter and jam sandwiches and Kraft dinner for about 3 months to make sure, compensate for the amount of money that I'd spent on this school, and still trying to hide it from my parents. I don't recall. I know at some point it came out, but I don't think it came out over the next year or so. And then immediately following school, in fact, there was a resume writing portion of one of our classes in school, and they said, pick a job that you're interested in and send a resume. And what I remember doing is, okay, I have zero background in this, but I want to work at a racing school. And it wasn't the one I had gone to, but it was one called Powell Motorsport at Mosport.
Right.
They had a group of Corvettes, and I had met a guy at the auto show that I had gone to, and I was asking everybody, well, how do you go racing? How do you go racing? Like every young kid who has an interest in it, they ask those questions. And what I found out was that you had to have a lot of money. I didn't have that, as you can tell by the peanut butter and jam sandwiches and Kraft dinner. So I determined that the next best way was to be involved in a racing school, and somehow there would be some crossover. And if I could become an instructor, that would be even better, because then I would have another way of jumping from the poor side of racing to the richer side of racing. And so I did up this resume. The cover letter, I'm still quite proud of it at my age. This is a lot of years ago.
You still have a copy?
I don't. No, I wish I did. The cover letter had pretty much 0 words on it, and it had a diagram of a 90-degree corner, and it had the car in 2 or 3 different positions on that corner with force vector coming out of it, showing the amount of forward force, backward force, and lateral force.
So staying in school helped.
Yeah, I mean, well, the school part, that actually came from grade 13 physics.
There you go.
The diagram that I did got me in for the interview because I had no experience.
Right.
But the simple fact that they knew I had the interest in it enough to put a diagram together of how the forces work in a corner, at least to the knowledge that I had. I'm sure it wasn't ideal, but unique enough, I'm sure, that nobody else had ever done.
Yeah, it stood out.
Yeah, so I got the interview, and I was hired on as a gopher, which was perfectly fine. I'm in the door now.
Right.
And 2 weeks later, one of the instructors quit and moved to do something else, and they started training me as an instructor.
And as an instructor, you've got your 3-day course behind you. Which did it give you your racing license?
It did.
It did. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it basically gave you the right to get a racing license, and then of course you have to go through the hoops of paying for it and whatever else, medical and stuff. So yeah, I gotten to that point. That's all I had was a racing school, and virtually no experience on how to teach other than somebody taught me. So I jumped into it, and I was there for a couple of years.
That's wild. Because it's another thing to be able to do something. But to take your ability and to translate that knowledge to someone else is not something everyone can do.
It's not, but it's really fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people don't have the patience. Some people are gifted with the ability and don't understand what they're doing.
Why it's doing right.
Yeah. I hate those people. But
it happens in every endeavor.
It does.
Yeah.
And some people are just so talented, and I hate to use the word naturally, but it's natural in the sense that they may have done a whole bunch of other things. They might have rode a motocross bike. They might have done a number of different, ridden a snowmobile and understand the physics better. They might be a mechanic, and all of that training.
And some of them it's almost unconscious because they can't explain why.
Right.
It's not a conscious thing that they're actually doing. It just gets done.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And I'm sure this is the same in every industry. You have people who are good at what they do, but they're not good at explaining because they never really had to sit back and think about it.
Right.
And so not everybody's a good instructor, as you said. And I found myself being one of those people who had to understand everything. And I couldn't get past a point. I couldn't. I guess I'm more of a cautious driver, even, in that if I don't know what's beyond the point of traction, as an example, I don't want to go there until I understand what is going to be there.
And yet you challenge yourself with rallying, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which is sort of a bit of a counter to that.
I guess it is. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And I threw myself into some situations and made it out majority of the time, except for that poor
thermos.
Yeah. I was going to say the tree. I'm trying to think of which tree I hit. Whether it was a
trees are pretty robust. Thermoses
I think it was a plum tree.
Oh, it was a plum. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is in the Fruitland area of St. Catharines?
Yeah, just in between St. Catharines and Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Okay,
there's a whole group of fruit farms. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I guess mostly wineries now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. So you're now an instructor, but not at Spinard David, or?
No, Spinard David is no longer. Right. I was at Powell for 2 years. I then moved to Shannonville, a different racetrack down the road near Belleville, and I taught there for 4 years. For the full 4 years, we had the Nissan School of Performance Driving, and that was with the Goodmans. Yeah. And then the latter 2 years, they bought what was the Spinard David Racing School and bought all their equipment basically and changed it. They had sponsorship from Bridgestone and it became the Bridgestone Racing School.
So you also taught the 2000 cars as well?
I did, yeah.
Wow. Now, did you also race in the 2000 cars at all?
I raced in the school cars, yes. I did some racing on separate weekends, and some of the public weekends I would join in as a driver.
Because they had a series as well, right? They had a school series.
They did, yeah. Well, Spinard actually had a really good series. I think they were running 7 people in each car, is what I heard in their heyday.
Wow.
Meaning that they would rotate. So there'd be 10 cars, let's say,
Right.
and there'd be 7 heats to get to the finals, or whatever it might have been. It might.
Well, 2000 used to be really big in Canada. They had an Export A series.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
really quite.
And if anybody who watches this has any appreciation for racing, that is the best racing. And my belief is that it's the prize money that brings the people.
Right.
So, if you're heard about being a sponsor and a title sponsor of a series, make sure that it goes to prize money. Because if you have the prize money, you're going to get the notoriety. You're going to get racers wanting to be there, and you're going to get a huge amount of people wanting to watch it. Because if the purse to win a race is big,
Right.
the racing's going to be great.
Wow. Oh,
And it's a simple formula.
right.
Export A did it. Another series was the Players GM.
And Firestone did it as well, right?
Firestone did it to a lesser degree, but
Yeah.
I mean the payouts, as I can recall, were larger then, and we're talking when would it be late '80s? Yeah,
That's happened.
late '80s,
Yeah,
early
that's right,
'90s
yeah.
were bigger payouts for a win than they are today in some of the racing series. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's nuts, and of course the costs are way higher
Yeah.
as well. So having a just one sponsor, or the organizing bodies, it seems, feel that racers will come in and they'll pay a fee to race, and they will not have a great prize fund because people like to race because it pads their ego. There's a lot of truth to that. But if you want really good racing and you want to be the one series to watch,
Right.
prize money
Prize money.
will bring people in. The Export A series brought in drivers that became IndyCar drivers.
Oh, yeah.
The racing was phenomenal.
It was amazing.
People came from all over to watch it. It was big on television at that point.
Yeah.
There's a lot more mediums now to watch these things, but definitely the prize money gets you there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So from there, what happened to?
Yeah. So after 4 years at Shannonville, I was actually a little bit burnt out. I got to a point where, as students would come into our course, and we had 12 per day, typically. We had 1, 2, and 3 day schools, and as they walked in, I got to a point where we would watch them come from the parking lot. They walked a little bit of distance, and I almost categorized them as they walked towards me.
You knew the.
Yeah, just the way they sauntered in, or they looked around. You could tell whether they were nervous and you were going to have to push them. You could tell whether they just had that
Bravado.
that fleeting moment. That was a demonstration. They were going to have those are the ones you didn't want to go with in the car, because you didn't know whether they were going to
Right.
just skip out.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
because at the beginning you would have to sit in the passenger seat while these people were driving.
Yeah, and the school formula was great, and I shouldn't have used the word formula, but the model.
Or the methodology, perhaps.
That too,
Yeah.
yes. But we had sedans, which were the Camaro IROCs, and we would work with the people in the cars. Sometimes on the skid pad. Usually they were on their own on the skid pad. We would instruct from the outside. When we were on the track, we were in the car with them, in the Bridgestone school, and then it was a 4-day school, in fact, for those. And the latter 2 days, you were in the Formula car. So we could, as instructors, be in the car with them for the first couple of days while they were building up their speed. We could learn the nuances of each of the drivers and what sort of things, when they got to a high pressure situation and the stress level went up, what then fell off. And we, by radio, or at least taking notes afterwards in the Formula cars, we knew what was happening, and we could easily instruct from the outside. There's amazing things what you can see from the outside even without that, but it was actually a good model in being able to go from the in-car instruction to outside instruction. I wish we had that today. So mostly what we do is in-car instruction, and it would be nice to move to a partial in-car to outside the car.
Right, because it's really different, I imagine. I know when driving with an instructor, there's, I guess, a feeling of security, whereas if the instructor isn't there, you're on your own, which is, I guess, how you're going to be on the track.
Yeah, in the end, definitely it's going to be that way. And the only one you have to be able to rely on is yourself.
Right.
I don't know that people, I guess it depends on the track that you're on, because I don't think people will, even with an instructor in the car, will rely on the instructor to do everything. If they have no idea what they're doing, they will. I've talked myself around a racetrack a number of times in the passenger seat, mostly because we have the situations where we get into cars where people haven't got a baseline of instruction or an understanding. It's an experience for them. So there's not much sense in going through a really detailed hour-long classroom or more to get them up to a base level of understanding. It's just, let's just get them in the car. We're going to go for a 10-minute experience out on the track, and we have to talk the whole time to tell them exactly what to do, when to start braking, when to start turning, where to look, and everything is based on what we're saying. And that's full on teaching or instruction. I call it just, I'm the computer operator and you're the computer. That's typically what it is. And depending on the racetrack, we work at Mostport most of the time now, and it's an extremely fast track.
It's a real old school track. I mean, if you're off, it's either going to bend something or hurt.
Yeah.
Right. There's very little margin for error.
Yeah. It is still classed as the fastest racetrack in North America.
Is it really?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. So it's ludicrous that we actually put beginners out on that track.
Right.
But it attracts people. So we kind of have to do that. It's part of the track is part of the marketing. The smaller track that they have there, the DDT driver development track,
I know, yeah. I is like the DDT kind of sets people off.
It does, yeah, yeah. But driver development track is better in that it's a slower speed track. It's very technical, and I hate calling it a slower speed track because it's still fast.
There's some quick parts.
And it's. The only downside to it from an instructor point of view is, again, if you're doing an experience, there's no time to take a breath. There's really no straightaways long enough that you take a breath.
Right.
You're always on, so you're constantly talking, kind of like what I'm doing right now.
Well, so after a little bit of a burnout in Shannonville, what was the next stage?
So at that point, it was a career change, or I was looking for a career change because I thought
It affected you that much?
Yeah, and at that point, I had kind of given up on racing. I had done some racing in between. But the second year I started, in fact, the first year I started teaching, I was taxed with working with the owner's son and running a go-kart. So we did some competitive go-kart racing. Not very much. And then the following year, I then went into Firestone Firehawk racing. I bought a car, and subsequently sold it. I think it was a month later to my co-driver, and he said, "I'll buy the car, and we'll." I forget what the deal was. I think he was paying for most of the race weekends. I had to pay for my expenses, and that was kind of it. But it was part of the deal. I gave him a really good deal on selling the car to him. I did have some money invested in it. That was my first year, and then I raced subsequent years, but not full seasons. And it was just there was just so much involved in trying to maintain racing, trying to get and service sponsors.
Because you're doing everything yourself.
Well, I was, yeah, and most people were. There were some who had a talent and had somebody who had know-how and really wanted to work for them. I wasn't one of those people. I didn't have the same talent level that others did, but I wanted to race, and I found it difficult in trying to put somebody's name on the side of the car and saying, for this many thousands of dollars, you're going to get a sticker on the car. It was just so insincere. It was like, what the hell is that going to do for you? Like, you've really got to enjoy racing and want to come out to the race and watch somebody else drive a car with your name on it to sponsor this. And it just wore off on me. The driving didn't. I wanted to drive, and I desperately wanted to drive. But the chasing of sponsorships and justifying it in my own mind became very difficult. Gotcha. So I gave that part up. So I then moved on to, I knew of a magazine, a car magazine. I went and applied for a job there. I got it. And we were doing special projects at this magazine. It was called Car Guide. And they had a boating magazine. They couldn't fit me into the car magazine right away. And I don't think I really ever got into the car magazine. But I was on the boating side, and the car side I would do special projects.
Well, that's interesting. Now, were you aware of your uncle's attachment to boating at the time?
Yeah, at that time I was aware of it, but it certainly didn't come down through my veins. It was fun. I mean, we went out and we had to do boat tests, and so I went out on the boat with one of the professional. I think he was a racer. I don't know what level he raced. Mark Rothermel, I believe his name was, and he was our boat tester, and I went out with him, and he would explain as we were on a pretty high powered bass boat how we would trim it out and how we just skim across the top of the water. I found it pretty fascinating, but those were like one day a year type of tests. And then the special projects that we did for the car stuff, we were doing what they called Jeep College. So it was a training for sales staff. We would take them in an off-road setting and do off-road portion as well as classroom portion, and it was just a day training for them, and we would move across the country. So we did that. We did a 4x4 adventures up at Deerhurst in Muskoka, and there were a few other things. We did some things with the magazine as well, where we brought general public in to test cars and wrote about it in the magazine. Well, they did. I didn't do the writing, but I facilitated the driving portion of it. So that's kind of where it got started. So that would have been 93 to I think 97.
So they're almost like events already that you're kind of working.
Yeah, I got thrown into events at that point, which was pretty neat. Didn't realize where it would take me at that point. I knew the events were fun. I enjoyed them. And then I left there. I became self-employed and started to find my legs in doing instruction for product launches for car manufacturers through different companies, and I did that for I think 4 years, and then moved into. I worked alongside a company, which was an automotive logistics and detailing company, and they had a couple of manufacturers that they did press vehicles for and some marketing vehicles, and they had a warehouse and a shop that they prepared the cars, and they wooed me to come over. They had witnessed a little bit of my management style with some of the staff that I had on some events, and I don't know, I must have caught them at the right time. They liked what they saw, so they. I ended up working for them for about 7 years, and during that period, just it started to fall into the events. Originally, it was supposed to be I was managing one of the shops and taking care of the fleet of cars, and I don't think it was a year that I was with them that one of the manufacturers said, "Oh, we understand that Jeff McKague is on your team, and we've got a launch of this vehicle, which was a Mazda RX-8.
Oh,
Can
wow.
you want to take a stab at giving us a proposal to do the whole thing?" I'm like, sure. And that ended up being our first car full launch that I put together.
RX-8?
It was the RX-8, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a fun one. And we used the base of the racetrack, Mossport, now called Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. But and that's where we started with everything. It was a media event, and we did a bunch of things outside of that, and it was pretty successful.
Wow.
So
that was sort of the genesis.
it was. And then their other clients were Toyota and Lexus, and we started to do events for them. And as it turned out, we were doing the majority of the events in Canada for Mazda, and we again, every event, I think about a year after that, every event for Toyota and Lexus, we were doing all of their events in Canada. So yeah, a lot of experience through those events. We were all over the place in the country. It was fun. It was a lot of work. It was fun though, and there came a time where I just said, "Yeah, I'd like to do this for myself."
Nice.
So I broke away from the company and opened up my company in 2010, and with the desire to not only do those events, but also expand outside of the automotive market. That didn't work so well.
Okay, well, now how far out of the automotive market did you try to expand?
Well, I knew we could do events.
Right.
So just doing any events, what I had hoped was that some of the automotive clients that I had, and I could reach out of, and go to a corporation and say, we can put an event together for you. But I guess at that point I was naive in thinking that there was a possibility that me running automotive events would give me the experience to run an event that was a conference or something. And once I started into investigating it, I realized that there are companies that do conferences, and they do them way better than I ever could, at that point anyway.
Right.
So now I find myself partnering with those companies.
Oh.
And so they do the conferences, we do an incentive travel programs, and we do the automotive programs.
Gotcha.
And that works out very well.
Now, do you still have a bit of a desire to drive, or are you still driving?
I do, yeah. I've driven over the last couple of years. Well, before I left the automotive detailing business, my boss at that time, and Mazda had a car. My boss at the company wanted to go into a race, and so we ended up entering. He was a navigator. Never navigated before, never sat in a race car on a racetrack. he didn't know what he was getting into.
So which track were you driving?
Well, we tested on it was the DDT at the time, the old DDT.
The old DDT, right.
We tested there, and it was the Targa Newfoundland that we did.
The Targa Newfoundland.
We did. I did it twice.
So hold on, that's kind of like the last sort of old school rally in North America, isn't it? Maybe the only one?
No. There's a whole Canadian rally series.
Okay, but it's certainly the one that's best known.
It may be best known to some degree. I mean, a lot of automotive media over the last, when it first came out, which would have been around 94, 93, I think it would have started, somewhere around there. Because the car we drove was a 94 RX-8. We didn't drive it in 94. It was made for an auto journalist who drove it then. 95 it sat, let me back up. It was in the 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm missing a decade here.
That's
so
okay.
it was a 2004 RX-8, and so it would have been 2003 that they started. He drove it in 2004. It sat 2005. We drove it in 2006.
That was your first entry into
it? Was, and we were kind of a privateer entry with it was a corporate car, meaning it was Mazda. Mazda owned the car.
But you entered it on your own, I guess.
We did, yeah.
Gotcha.
The company that I was working for entered it. Mazda helped us a little bit by preparing the car and shipping it, which was
that's a big part of it.
Big part of the cost, yeah. And then we ran the race, and it was interesting and fun, definitely fun.
How'd you do in the first one?
We finished 33rd.
Out of how many?
90 somewhere.
Your top third.
90. Well, I mean, there are many different classes too.
Sure, but overall, I mean, still, regardless of the class, that's
there's three different classes that we ran in. Of course, we were modern because it was a new to newer car. Yeah, and then the following year, Mazda decided that they wanted to participate, so they put another car into the time distance rally portion. So you didn't have to have a roll cage, and then the RX-8, which already had a roll cage, went into the full Targa class, and we ran that. And
how'd you do?
We did actually pretty well in that one. We won it.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So it was your second try, and you won.
Yeah. Now we didn't win overall. But we won the modern division.
So you won your class.
We won our class.
Well, still, that's like winning a class at Le Mans or Sebring.
Yeah, and to be fair to the moderns, because the modern cars never win, and it has to do with the way they handicap. The age of the car, the size of the engine, the classic, as an example. If you have a classic car, and here's probably the best example of a winning classic car. You have a classic car, you strip it down, and you rebuild it.
Oh, okay.
And you rebuild it as a new car.
But it's still classed as a classic?
It's still classed as a classic, so your time to get through a particular stage would be, some stages long enough could be 30 seconds to a minute longer than what we would have to do in a lower powered car.
Gotcha. But because it's a classic.
Because it's a classic, it's got the handicap and can do better than us.
Gotcha.
So that was not complaining.
No,
not complaining at all, because I would rather be in a modern car.
Right.
Safety elements are better. Yeah. Just everything's better, and that was one of the highlights of my racing career.
And it was a rally, which kind of comes back to what you were...
Yeah, it was a tarmac rally, and absolutely. It was...
So there goes your sort of concern about knowing what's coming up. You dealt with it really, really well in your class.
Yeah. Admittedly, the second year, because each year they change about, I think it's around 30% of the course.
Ah, okay.
So 60% of the course, if you can remember 3,500 corners, and I can't, but some of the key corners I could remember. I can remember coming out and your diagram that you get a route book ahead of time. You don't get like in the World Rally Championships. Even the Canadian Rally Championship is the same, where they get to go out and do a reconnaissance,
Oh, right.
and they make their own notes. You don't get to do that. We're not supposed to look at the road ahead of us. So
what does the navigator do except hold on?
well, the navigator has you're given 5 route books, one for each day, on the Saturday previous to the event starting on Monday, and the navigator looks at them, and basically they have important corner notes. So somebody has gone out and made all of these notes part of the organizing body and created this route book.
So, but it's not quite like the classic European rally where there's someone just reading notes.
No,
Gotcha.
no. So the navigator's job, and I don't know that all navigators did this, but we were coached because we went to a school for it, not having ever done it before, me or my navigator. We were desperate for information, like how do we deal with this? I've always driven on a racetrack,
Right.
and I'm by myself. Now I've got to listen to somebody telling me that 200 meters ahead I've got to turn to the right, and it's going to be an acute right turn.
Right.
As I'm bombing along, concentrating on the road, and because they don't tell you all the turns, it's only the critical ones. So I'm dealing with turns, I'm dealing with bumps in the road and everything, and then I hear this chirp in my ear, and I'm like, "What'd you say?" Because I don't register.
Right.
So my brain's concentrating on 100% on what I'm doing, and so it was that realization of there's another dimension here that I need to listen to.
Gotcha.
Literally, and
it's kind of like marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, marriage is the other way around. As you get older and you're married longer, you tune them out. Is that not the case?
Or just unplug the headphones.
So anyway, I got to tell you this part about it.
Sure. Yeah.
After the first day of the first rally with my novice navigator, I was like almost sick to my stomach, because all of my teaching career, and I through all this time, 6 years full time teaching people, and then periodic teaching after that. I've always taught people that when you go to under a racetrack, your first lap should be a decent slow lap.
Recon, right? Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See what's different on the track, and then build your speed up.
Right.
So now I'm lining up on a line. There's this dial of lights, and then a green light that comes on. And I put my foot down to the floor, and I have no friggin' idea what's 100 feet down the road.
Oh, man.
And I am flat to the floor, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so not used to this.
Right.
How do I deal with this? And I really had to change my mindset, because when I came into it, I was like, oh, I got all these skills, and I'm sure a lot of these drivers are coming in, and it might be a bucket list thing for them, and I'm just going to shoot by them. And
I hate to break this to you, but it sounds like the way you've actually sort of progressed through your life. There's an analogy there, in that you went and did something that you really didn't have an idea what it took to do. You did it anyway. So instead of taking years, it took seconds. But the elements of that...
I wouldn't say seconds,
Well,
but yeah,
okay, but
relative, I suppose,
speaking,
yeah. And my mindset after that day, and I'm sitting in my at the privacy of my hotel room, if I was even there, because it's quite taxing after your day of driving.
Right.
You then have a car show.
Oh,
so you're 4 hours in a car show. You're usually not back in your hotel room till 10:30, 11 o'clock, and then up again at 6 the next morning to be in the car for 7:30. It's rigorous, but again,
fun.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
Right, yeah.
But I remember sitting in my hotel room, and I'm thinking, I have to change my mindset here. I have to change how I deal with this. And I don't think I dealt with it even very well on the second day. But once we got past the second day, there was pressure taken off, because we created an issue with the car.
How so?
Well, it had to do with a dispute that I had with my navigator, who was telling me that the next turn was to the right, and visually I was like, "There's no." I guess he was telling me it was to the left. I remember the I can see the corner still. This is more than a decade ago.
Wow.
And we're coming down this hill, and there's a little valley, and we start going up another hill, and so I can see the road, and he's adamantly telling me the corner's to the left. And so if it's the corner's to the left, I'm going to set up on the right side of the road. And I'm telling him through the intercom, like, it's got to be to the right. Are you sure? Absolutely. It's to the left. Absolutely. I said, it can't be. There's no road to the left. It's either straight or right. And just as we were upon the corner, he's like, okay, you're right. It's right.
Oh, boy.
And I turned in, and the road was paved across, and then it had like a gutter under on the one side for water. And it wasn't like we have here, where they're concrete on the curbs. It was pavement all the way across. So visually, I didn't see it. Dropped the wheels down. We hit the exhaust, and we had a catalytic converter up until that point.
Oh, jeez.
And it just crushed the catalytic converter inside the case. And I didn't know that at the time, but we started to lose power. And we just started dropping back. Like, we couldn't get it over 3,500 RPM. And we're in an RX-8, which revs to 9,000.
Yeah.
And best runs between 5 and 9. We couldn't get it over 3,600 RPM.
Couldn't get the exhaust in. Right.
Yeah, so it was just everything that was inside that was just balled up, and the air wasn't getting through. And so we ran the rest of the day like that. I remember coming down this one, we were in 6th gear. We didn't use 6th gear in the car. It was an economy gear, but I was doing everything I could to get a speed. Coming down a hill, we were doing 130 kilometers an hour, and I maxed out. It's like the rev limiter's on. And I put the clutch in, and we made it to 140.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's how much resistance we had. We ended up dropping so far back, and that's why we ended up with the result of 33rd by the end of the week. But pressure was off at the end of that day to have a good result. So it was just, okay, let's just go out and we're going to have fun. We're going to change our attitude. And so I drove the course differently, and it was better. And I took that information for the following year, which was great.
But so how did you change your approach the second year that really helped?
Well, a couple of things changed. My navigator bowed out when he realized that Mazda was coming in with a fair chunk of money. Okay. And he thought, I'm probably not the guy to be navigating a car for Mazda Canada.
That's quite something.
So we had already hired another guy who was a Bridgestone Racing Academy instructor. So we asked him if he would be the navigator. So he's already done some right seat instruction. We knew he'd be good with the movement of the car, probably understand what the car was doing even if he wasn't looking up, which was definitely the case. And I thought, okay, here's a guy. I've learned what I know. I know what I like to hear as far as words that will encourage me to do what I need to do. I told him what those are. I gave him basically a vocabulary to speak to me. And then we didn't have in-car camera in the first year, so I bought in-car camera footage from another team.
Oh, wow.
And I had him view it. And so he looked at a lot of the course and had the ability to hear another navigator speak of this. We had the route books from the first year. Basically, he went through a full education. Jeez. And he took it on. And he, by just juxtaposition, basically, of the first year on day 2, which was the Tuesday, where we had damage in the car. About the same point, I turned to him and I said, whatever you say, I am going to do. And meaning that if the road didn't look like it was going to turn to the right, but you told me it's going to turn to the right, I'm turning right.
Wow.
And you tell me when to do it, and I will do it. I said, you haven't made a mistake yet. And so if you have, and I said, I'm giving you, basically, I'm listening to you 100%. You run with that. If you have any question of what you're saying as being true, or you're uncomfortable with it, tell me, because I don't want to make the decision based on that. So if you have some concern, let's talk really quickly about it. And it might be a case of we need to slow down for that particular corner to figure it out.
Wow.
We never had that.
Wow.
Yeah. So the confidence of that, and a few things that luck falls our way, we won.
Jeez.
It was just, it was that much of a difference. Navigator plays a pretty important role in that, because they are your eyes when you can't see over the next hill or around the next corner.
Well, and apart from the role, there also has to be that relationship.
Yeah.
Of absolute trust.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And in a rally like that, and it's a tarmac rally, meaning that it's all pavement. There's the occasional portion of the race where there's a bit of gravel, just because the road's out, they've repaired it, and it's just gravel. We had some instances of that, but he had full confidence in me. I can remember one time we went sideways in the car, and it wasn't a place where I wanted to go sideways. It was unexpected, and we recovered, and I can still hear him hollering, "You saved the day! That was so awesome!"
Okay, keep going, he's okay. Good save, Jeff. Very good, you saved it. Oh, man.
Jesus, now I know why they're in there.
Okay, there's no further instruction, I'm just reading off, and we're at the finish.
Holy shit, that went fast.
You saved the day, you just saved us.
It was a lot of fun. It really was. It was intense, and I was probably more intense than I needed to be, but in the end, it was one of the better times behind the wheel of a car. So today, I'm renting the occasional car. I'm jumping into the occasional car. I'm doing whatever I can now, just to have fun. My business is to a point, and I'm coaching drivers in racing and otherwise. So it makes sense for me to keep up my skills. So that's part of my development is going and doing some races. So
you're not static by any sense of.
Oh no, I can't. Right. It's not in my constitution to be static.
But it's also good when you're doing everything from events to coaching drivers, in that if you're still learning and growing, you can pass that along.
Mm-hmm. And I don't ever think that I know it all. In fact, I almost feel like sometimes I'm pretending. There's a lot of knowledge that I fall back on. There's no question there, and I realize that when I feel like I'm pretending sometimes, and I was like, yeah, okay, I've been here before, and I can fall back on that knowledge. But I went ice racing this past weekend.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
how did that go?
It was fun. I'm not going to say there weren't some exciting portions of it, but it was learned. I had to learn a lot, and I was
because it's just total lack of grip, right? To some extent.
Right, and I sort of fashioned it to, and I used to watch a lot of World of Outlaw and sprint car racing, oval track, dirt, and clay racing, and
was the ice racing on an oval?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, geez.
But similar to the oval, or at least that type of racing, is that there are places where there's grip and there's places where there isn't grip, and usually in the middle of the track it gets glazed, right, and there's no grip there. So you either run the inside slower and then bolt down the straightaway in an oval, or you run the outside rim. and then he shoots you off.
So it's
And
almost like a snow line.
yeah, so I figured that's the way ice racing is going to be. There's
Right.
going to be a polished area in the middle, and you stay away from that, and you try to find the grip elsewhere. Well, that wasn't exactly the way it went. But so there was a learning of that, but it was great. I mean, I had 6 races. I had a couple of incidents with the snowbank.
Oh, jeez.
But 4 out of the 6 races, it was fantastic. Even the snowbank brushes, brush is an understatement on one of them. But I did most of the race, like 10-lap races, and I would have done probably 8 laps or so of the race before I decided to transfer some whatever. Anyway, it was fun, and I got to say though, one of the things I really enjoy about driving cars, and that's really what all of this has been about outside of my business, is that cars are an equalizer. It doesn't matter who's behind the wheel. It can be a 17-year-old kid. It can be a 70-year-old guy. Mm-hmm. It can be a female or a male. It doesn't matter. Everybody has the same ability in a car. And that's a sport that I think is fantastic. Right. In that we have so many athletic sports where a male physique is a stronger physique than a female physique, and there's other things that the females are better than males at. So this sport is an equalizer. It's kind of like curling.
Curling.
Well, and really, I mean, you can have mixed in curling, and it can be just the same.
Right.
But this is one of those sports, and I was when I was ice racing this weekend, I was chasing a 17-year-old female.
There you go.
And she was great.
And that's the other aspect too, is that people don't really, or may not, understand the physical effects on your body from driving a car at speed. I mean, it does tax you physically, never mind psychologically, because you have to be focused on what you're doing 100%.
There's one of my great thrills of taking people for a ride. And especially people, well, I shouldn't say especially, but even people who have driven a simulator and, I know how to handle this. When they feel the physical movement of a car, right, and they get to that, half a G lateral load and go, oh! Yeah. And then I'm like, well, we're not even halfway there, man. There's still another half G we've got to go before we're going to lose any grip. They are just blown away, and some people just can't take it. Yeah. My chiropractor, who's he works with Olympians in his field, not in his field, but in chiropractic. He we had talked for a couple of years, and he said he had worked on Alan McNish.
Oh wow!
And one of the other drivers, when the Audis were there a number of years ago, he was called out to the track. They needed somebody local, and he was local to the racetrack, and he didn't know much about racing, or if anything, at that point. So he took the opportunity to talk to me about it, and he said, "I'd love to get in the car with you, because I'd love to feel what the driver goes through physically, so that I have a better idea of." Yeah, exactly. Wow. So it wasn't last season; it was the season before. I'd given him a bunch of dates. He picked one. He came out, and we went around the track, and he was one of those guys. I'm not even up to speed yet. I'm just starting to build speed. We're chatting a little bit, and he's just like white as a ghost.
Wow.
I'm like, "You okay?" He goes, "Yeah, this is fast enough for me." And I'm like, well, "We're not even close, man. You're not even. You can't, trust me on this. I'm not going to put you in any danger, right, but there's a lot more room. Right. I'd like you to feel it." So we went a little bit faster, but I took it easy on him. And anyway, we sat down, had lunch, came back out, and gave him a little bit better flavor of it, and he understands better now. But I don't think he'll ever get back in a car again. And it wasn't a thrilling ride by any means. I mean, I've given people thrilling rides, sometimes unexpectedly. Yeah, it's definitely the physical aspect of it it can be hard on you, especially in a Formula car. When you're in a Formula car, there's not a whole lot of dampening, not a whole lot of movement. When you're in a sedan, it's not as bad. But as you get more accustomed to driving as a driver, you don't have the same stress in your body. There's still stress, don't get me wrong. It's just your body's more relaxed doing it. And so it doesn't have the same stress level, and so the muscles don't hurt as much. You can run in a car and drive at longer periods of time and have the same stress level as you might have had driving a car for 15 minutes when you're new at driving. It's just you're so tense when you first start. I see that with the novices now.
I was going to say, do you see that in the events that you run as well with some people who just, even though they're not even close to what the car can do, just tensing up? Or
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's I think it's the fear of the unknown is a big part of it. Their mental state of, I must be at the limit, because they have no idea where the limit is. And so they feel that they're pushing themselves and getting to that limit point. And there's the fear of, when I get to the limit, am I going to be able to handle it?
Right.
Some people will think about that, some won't. But there's definitely that.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, they're fun. But unfortunately, although I do make money, it's part of my business to do coaching and teaching novices.
Some interesting people too. I mean, you coached Jeff Gordon, did you not?
Well, yeah, he was early in my career.
Yeah.
And I was part of a racing school and part of a team of instructors. So, yep, I touched his career.
Wow.
Yeah, he doesn't remember it, but I touched his career in my mind.
He might, you never know.
No, I met him after.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Really is a great guy. But I had it was a 3-day school, and he came in. And of course, it was before his NASCAR career.
Right.
So we didn't know who he was, but we knew that 2 people were coming. He and one other person were coming to the track. We were told by our boss that a couple of people are coming from the States. They're special. They've got some racing background. Just make sure that it was just more of a, they're coming sort of thing. Let us know. I got in the car with him, and he was extremely smooth.
Wow.
Really gifted to go between the brake pedal and the gas pedal. Just the quickness and smoothness of it. A lot of people would jump on the gas and your head would be thrown back. His would just a slow movement back, and it was progressive and it was fast, and he just, you could see that he had a lot of ability. And his attitude, because I was still fairly new, was teach me like you teach anybody else, and I can learn something from everybody.
Wow.
Was his attitude. About 8, maybe 10 years later, I was working with the Starlight Foundation, and I was granting a wish for a young boy who wanted to meet Jeff Gordon. And if he couldn't meet Jeff Gordon, he wanted to get a go-kart painted up in at that time, the rainbow colors of DuPont Rainbow. Yeah. Okay. And so it wasn't even my wish, but the Starlight Foundation knew that I was involved in racing and motorsport, and so they called me and said, "Could you help out?"
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So I made a call over to DuPont and found out that Jeff was coming into Ontario, Canada, and for, I think it was the 40th anniversary of one of the paint plants here in Ajax, and that we could work something where we could set something up, and it wasn't going to cost us anything. DuPont was flipping the bill for everything for Jeff Gordon, and we were basically just going to join in. And so they were cool with that. I'm like, okay, we still have a budget. Let's get them a go-kart.
Oh, nice.
So we got him a go-kart. DuPont painted the front fairing of it. We got him a helmet. DuPont painted the helmet, as I recall. Maybe we just gave him a black helmet. I have to look at the pictures now. And we had Jeff Gordon present it to him. But we had the time that this boy was going to spend with Jeff Gordon was going to be in a limousine going from the airport to the venue. And so when we provided the limousine, it was part of one of the limousine companies donated a limousine to all of the wishes. And so we used that, jumped in the car with him. So there was 3 of us in the car. I don't remember whether one of his parents was there. I think so. Anyway, he had a sack full of stuff for Jeff Gordon to sign. Oh, and Jeff immediately gets in the car. Oh, I should go back because we were asking whether Jeff remembered me.
Right. Okay.
The boy hadn't arrived at the airport. I'm standing on the tarmac as Jeff gets out of the plane, and I introduce myself, and Jeff was the one who pipes up and says, "I was just telling the pilot," and he knew the pilot's name. I don't remember what it was. That I went to a racing school here a number of years ago.
He brought it up. So there
he brought it up.
That's cool.
And I said, I know. He says, how do you know? I said, I was one of your instructors. And he stepped back and he looked at me and he says, I don't remember you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was so deflated. So I thought everything that you did was because of me. Apparently not. So he probably thought I'm going to claim, a stake in his property at that point. I might have, should have. Anyway, so yeah, that was it. Anyway, wow. Jeff was fantastic. He actually, when he spoke to the group, all the people that were there from DuPont, he made it out that part of his career was he was fortunate to be where he was, and he was even more fortunate that people wanted to meet him. And so that's, this little boy was in that situation.
Wow.
And it was pretty cool the way he positioned it, and he made this kid feel pretty important.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was great. And apparently he did that for a lot of people because he did a lot of wishes.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, a lot of respect for him.
That's really, really cool.
Mm.
Well, I remember the school.
He remembered the school. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you did have a full face helmet on though at the time, right? Didn't you?
No, I don't think we wore helmets, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I fully understand. There was like 5 instructors, and he probably saw me for maybe 1/5 of the time. Yeah. So anyway.
Wow, that's really, really cool.
Yeah. So I mean, there were a few others along the way, but definitely he's the largest of the names.
Well, Tagliani was another one.
Tagliani was another. Daniel Morad is. I actually did private coaching for Daniel Morad.
Do you still work with him at all?
With Daniel, no. Daniel's got some pretty good talent.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy watching him now.
He's got a watch, doesn't he? He's got a 20.
He does. Yeah. He won 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they almost won this year again.
That was close.
Yeah. But
it was not fun.
I worked with Daniel when he was 8 years old.
When he was 8 years old?
Yeah, he was in go-karts. I was coaching his dad's boss. I don't know whether that's perfectly accurate because he might have been a consultant to the.
How do you coach an 8-year-old?
So, well, that's exactly it. I was coaching 2 guys in one car in a series called Grand Am at the time, pro series in the U.S., out of the U.S. And one of them was Daniel Morad's dad's boss. So when Daniel's dad told his boss, I want to get my son into go-karting, the boss said, well, you should get him some coaching right away. I've got a coach for you. So that was me.
Wow.
So yeah, I worked with them. It was the most frustrating thing I've ever done.
Well, I mean, to get an 8-year-old to basically eat at a regular time is enough of a challenge. Never mind actually listen when they're going around a go-kart track.
Yeah. Well, and Daniel was great. He's a nice kid. His dad was nice. We went to the racetrack. I think it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours drive for me to get to this particular go-kart track. And so I said, well, let's work 3 hours. You know, we'll take a little break in between, or breaks, but let's work 3 hours. And so I made out this whole plan of attack of how I was going to work with them. And I'd never worked with a kid before. I'd never worked with an 8-year-old, a go-kart, or anything like that. And at that time, I didn't even have kids. So, here I am trying to teach a kid like an adult. It wasn't working. So I quickly learned that, to back things off a little bit, and picked one thing that I felt would be important to start with, which was vision. And I pressed on with the vision as much as I could, and after about an hour and a half, I went to his father and I said, I feel like I'm wasting your money.
Really?
Nothing's happening here. He's just driving around. He'd rather be in the trailer having a Coke and a chocolate bar, right, which is where we found him a couple of times. So I left, and his father phoned me, and all excited, and he said, Jeff, he's doing it now. All the things that you were teaching him, he's now doing. Wow. Like, okay, so there's a little bit of time there that, for him to grasp onto it and process it. Yeah. So I worked with him a couple more times, but that was it. That was kind of it for the summer. And I didn't work with him again after that. But I hope, because I've always said that the first thing that we should be taught to anybody is the proper vision technique for driving.
You had a board that we were using.
Yeah.
Do you still use that?
I still have the equipment. We don't use it as much, but when I am training some racers and I have them in the area, I put them on the board because it shows them a number of different things. The board is partly visual, and it's more brain reaction.
Okay.
And so it's built on repetition, and that the board, just to do a quick explanation of it, is it's a 4x4 board that has 64 buttons on it, and they're all in a small circle, larger. It's like a big target, and each button lights up, and when it lights up, you press the button and the light goes out and moves somewhere else. That's the initial programming. It's kind of like whack-a-mole.
Okay. Are you able to use either hand, or you're
both?
restricted?
Both? Yeah. I mean, there's many ways in which you can use it. Okay. You can use it just with one hand. You can get creative with the programs, but typically it's two hands, and you're looking for rapid movement. So, and working with your peripheral vision initially, because you're widespread, you're as far away from the board as you can get while still being able to reach it, and you're banging these buttons out as quick as you can. We change the program. We build it from just a whack-a-mole to see how quick you are, to creating a stressful situation where the lights will only light up for so long, and you have to reach them before that goes out, or else you don't get the point. So if you are continuously behind, you don't get any points, and it becomes incredibly frustrating. And how you deal with that frustration and move on and try to get back into it is one of those stages of racing. Or anything, really. Right. It's being in, if you're lucky enough to be in the zone, or in flow, that you, and come out of it, you can get back into it.
Gotcha. And
how quickly you can do that, and how quickly you can develop that program to get back into it. And that's a big part of it. There's being selective, being stressed. We run endurance programs with it, where your brain starts to get bored because it's a repetitious movement, and you have to keep your brain active and involved in it. There's more cognitive work with it. We actually have you do, because there's a screen in the middle as well that flashes up numbers or letters, and so we can either have you reading at the same time you're banging these lights out, or we can have you just reciting numbers that flash up for 1/10 of a second, larger numbers that you can't possibly read from left to right in the time period that they're on. But you will recite them. You can almost glaze them into your brain, if you will, and recite them afterwards. Those are things that are important for, especially when you're moving fast in a car. Mm-hmm. So this is why I took this on, and I went in full force with it. And so that's the big part of why I have the equipment. It's used for many other things, but it's a fantastic piece of equipment. There's other things that we use as well, have used. And so yes, we still have the equipment. I did build a separate company for that, which I'm closing.
Really?
Yeah. Well, the whole part of it was going off into an area that really isn't my expertise. I was working with hockey players. We tried to work with armed security guards. We did actually work with them for a period of time until something happened in their company and budgets went away. And I mean, it's the upper levels of the military will use some of this equipment for training purposes, and we didn't. I mean, although I was part of working with some of them, I didn't through my own company. So, and that was, I had to work really hard at getting customers for that. It was taking away from the business that was making and still makes money for us, which is doing launches for car manufacturers and training for sales staff and consumer drives.
Now you've also done your own. Was it a consumer event? The Days of Thunder Bay. Was that what it was called?
Days in Thunder.
Days in Thunder. I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay. You're pretty much bang on though. It was in Thunder Bay, right. And we had the fun of naming it Days in Thunder. We were in our first year this year. We unfortunately ran into some unsafe ice situation. So we didn't. Well, and I didn't understand completely. They had to explain it to me. In November, it was really cold in Thunder Bay. The whole month was really cold. Ice formed. In December, they had an extremely warm December. The ice melted, not completely. There was a shelf of ice apparently that then dropped down below the water surface. To some degree. Then they had wet snow. The wet snow kind of got all chunky on top. They couldn't safely get onto the surface to plow it. So they couldn't make their annual ice racing track, which is like 1.7 kilometers long. Phenomenal track.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were using their track plus some elements that they were building specific for us. So we had to make the decision. Our event was going to be basically the beginning of February, and they called us about, I think it was in the second week of January, and said, here's the situation. We've canceled all our racing for January.
Oh my gosh.
We might be able to get back on in February, but we recommend that you don't run,
right? Because
we can't guarantee, and people are paying and they would be flying in, most of them from Toronto area to Thunder Bay for this event. And so we made a 24-hour decision and moved out of Thunder Bay and set something up in Minden. But all the people that had registered, we gave them the option because it was a full change of getting a full refund. And we had a few people take us up on that. I shouldn't say a few. We had about 50% of them take us up on that. And it got to the point where we felt that it was, and we had spent enough money shipping, changing everything from Thunder Bay back, bringing it into Minden, where they run on a fairgrounds, which is a great track too. It's much smaller, but a great track nonetheless. And we put a nice package together for that as well. And the package is all inclusive. Like when you get to the location, everything is included from there.
Accommodation?
Accommodations, food, drink, transportation
Oh, my
around.
goodness.
The cars are there. You're using our cars, which are provided by FAF Motorsport. Great cars.
Nice.
Yeah, Porsche, Mercedes.
Porsches?
Yep, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audis.
Oh, people got to hear about this.
Oh,
Sounds like a blast.
It is. Yeah, and of course it's probably best that I shave my head before I go because I'm going to pull my hair out because of these high-end cars out on this circuit sliding around without a whole lot of traction. You know what? It's just a ton of fun.
Now, are you planning to do it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
We're going to do it again.
Is there a URL where people can actually look at it?
They can go to our website. We have a promotional video that we put together for this year. When we went to Minden this year, we put some more elements together. We're going to create a new one, but there's the old one for 2019 program is still up on our website. It's eventmatrix.ca.
Okay, we'll put that up as a
yeah.
super. Well, no, for sure.
Yeah, just click on Days in Thunder while you're there, and the video's still there. You'll see what we started to put together for that. And
can people register for 2020 yet?
Not yet, but it very soon. We have to. We haven't had a chance because we've been out doing our Minden program and then the tire testing and a few other things that we've been dealing with very recently. So now we're going to start putting that program together. We're changing it up a little bit. We learned a few things this year that will make it a better program, and we're pretty sure it's going to be a little bit more affordable than it was last year. And
so it could be a price reduction even?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's our goal. That's our goal. So we're looking at a price reduction, and we're looking at even again, we've learned some things, some nicer elements to it. So it's first class all the way. That's the only way we work.
That's really
is
cool.
First class. You are going to be treated first class, and your smile is going to be first class all the way
So
through.
there's no.
You're going to be laughing.
There's no Pinto chassis going around a frozen pond.
Actually, that would be a lot of fun. Let's not kid ourselves. That would be a lot of fun. But no. We should get some of
Well, you've
those.
come a long way from a Pinto with no body.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To doing ice racing with Porsches.
It's funny though. The Pinto with no body was orange,
Yeah.
and our company, one of our company colors is orange. So.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
Did you have
full
a piece
circle.
of the bodywork left over? or
Yeah,
something?
maybe. At least in my mind. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, we'll certainly tell people about that. But as far as the other events that you're doing with manufacturers,
Yeah, we've been working with manufacturers for as long as we've had this company.
Right.
We've had one client that's been from the beginning
Wow.
and stuck with us. Yep. We've had a couple other manufacturers that we worked with for a good 4 years before the program went away. It wasn't a case of that we lost the business. It was the program went away, and we're doing tire testing. We've done programs launching a number of different tires to the tire dealers and to general public. We've done a lot of public programs, media programs for tires specific, much more for cars, in launching the cars to the automotive media. That's probably, I haven't really looked at a percentage of those, but we're probably 40 to 50% of our events are media events.
Right.
And then we have consumer events where a manufacturer will have a group of cars that they want consumers to drive.
Right.
Yeah, whether it's most of the programs are parking lot, set up pylons, and a fun course for the participants to drive. Some of them are on the road, and occasionally we get lucky and have them on the racetrack. We did one last year on the racetrack. It was so much fun. And sales training, we've done. Just like the Jeep College way
Yeah.
back when, we've done off-road style training. We've done on-road and we've done on-track training for sales staff.
Wow.
And parking lot dynamic training to show them the differences in vehicles. And then, of course, our motorsport division is training novices for their first day at the track, building them up so that they can come back and drive on their own, to full race coaching.
Wow.
Which is admittedly a passion.
Well, it's one of the few sports that doesn't have a dedicated coach. I mean, you play basketball, hockey, I imagine even curling has coaches. I mean, the skip kind of does.
Yeah.
But it's not really accepted to have a race car driver with a coach.
You'd be surprised.
They may be present, but it's not something that other people are aware of.
True.
Everyone thinks
and that
there's
is true. Yeah. Even there's many Formula One drivers will have a coach.
Right.
We'll have somebody that's helping them out. They may not call them a coach in some cases, but most of them do. There's some pretty top level drivers and teams that, and I'm starting to see it more, which is great. I was just looking on a website this morning because I'm looking at doing a race or a couple of races in the U.S. this year, and a couple of teams were saying, we have an engineer and we have a coach.
That's really cool.
Two different teams had said the same thing. I'm like,
wow.
That's encouraging.
Well, that is encouraging because there's this, I guess, mindset of a driver being a lone wolf, kind of shooting from the hip all the time, which really isn't the case at all. You really have to have some, if not training, coaching.
Yeah. Well, I suspect it comes from a different world where most of us here in Canada anyway, most of us drive. Yeah. And where I guess not most of us play tennis.
Right.
And so if you're going to go play tennis, you want to be good at it, you would be coached at it.
Right.
Not most of us. Well, that's a bad example. I was going to say
most
most of us don't
you're
ski,
right. I think it takes a little bit of some inner character to say there's more of this that I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and not everyone has that sort of perspective until they go sideways into a snowbank.
I wasn't sideways.
No, okay, sorry. Yeah. I would have been. Well, that's cool. Well, no, certainly. Well, hopefully we'll get some people. And if you're doing an event for 2020, now's the time to start building up, especially if the first one went well at Minden. I don't know if you're planning to do Thunder Bay again or Minden or.
Well, I'm toying with the idea of doing both.
Ah, okay.
And at this point, it's literally just
up in the air.
Up in the air.
Okay.
Like Thunder Bay, I would like to do.
Yeah.
The Thunder Bay surprised me in its offerings. Outside of the track is phenomenal. So that attracted me there. But then when I looked at all the other things that are there, the restaurants are incredible.
Yeah.
They have some really good restaurants.
Well, I think that's where the Canadian ski jumpers still train, wasn't it? Big Thunder?
Oh, it might be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So maybe they brought the restaurants in.
They
but
might have, yeah.
There's some great food there. We've got an absolutely fabulous venue that we go to for dinner. That's not even a restaurant, but we lucked out in that we checked out all the restaurants. The restaurant we liked the best ends up catering this venue
nice.
that we ended up going to.
Just by happenstance.
Yeah,
wow.
totally. We were working with a local, and they said, "Have you checked out this venue?" And I would have never thought of it. I'm looking for a restaurant. Well, you should look at this venue. So I looked at it, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool! I want to be here."
That's so
and they said, and this is the restaurant that caters us. And I'm like, perfect.
Very cool.
That's the restaurant I was going to go to.
Wow.
So it's coming to us now, and we have a private venue and entertainment, and that part of it's just perfect. And the hotel, we've got a brand new hotel.
Jeez.
That's there. It's a beautiful hotel right on the water. So
wow.
Accommodations are great. Everything it's like I said, first class.
Well, best of luck. Hopefully you do both.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that's a good place to. Thanks again for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. And we'll do this again sometime when you have more time, so we can maybe play with some toys and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I got to get you on a slot car track.
I've been on a slot car
You have
track.
been? Okay,
Yeah.
so, well...
Not for very long. It's usually the first corner.
First corner? Oh, okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
okay. But usually what we do is, as I think I mentioned this before, but again, your time pressure, but we usually have either the slot car challenge. There is the indoor longest drive for indoor golf.
Right.
But that has to be seen to be believed. And then there is also the bubble hockey challenge.
Right.
So, and we play against each other. You choose whatever side you want. If you win, I donate $100 to your favorite charity. If I win, you put $1 in the swear jar, and you have to swear in front of a camera for as long as you possibly can.
Oh, that could be hard.
I don't know if I've ever really heard you swear, to be honest. No, I don't think so.
It's never fucking happened.
Perfect. So we'll have to do that. You'll have to come back and do that again, especially when you get closer to getting the details for your events.
Sure.
That would
Okay.
be great. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks again. Cool.